Most of my life, I stayed in great shape because my job and my life depended on it. As time passed, my bulletproof mindset changed. In my late 50s, the joint pain I felt was excruciating. I lived with that pain for years and accepted that was a price to pay for playing hard. After watching you on YouTube, I started the Carnivore diet. It took only a few weeks for all that inflammation and joint pain to be relieved. I thought it was a miracle. What's funny is people are constantly saying, "You look great. What are you doing?" I explained the carnivore diet and usually receive the identical response: red meat is not good for you. I feel great, Shawn, better than I ever have in decades, and I will never go back to the standard American diet. I never had a six-pack. I'm starting to show signs of a six-pack now. It's amazing to me. These are all the noticeable changes that are going on. What about the changes that are going on in our body that we don't even see?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody's doing well today. We have with us Dave today, who's going to share his story with us. Dave, how are you today?
I'm good. Dr. Baker, how are you doing?
I'm doing just wonderful. It's a beautiful time of year out here and where I'm at in Washington, and had a nice walk with my boy and my dogs. Went around this morning and we were identifying all the different plants. I got a little app. It's called something I can't remember. You take a picture of a plant and it tells you exactly what it is. So we had a lot of fun with that, but that was nice. So tell me, where are you located? That's a pretty area as well. Tell us, I guess, let's just get started here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background and what happened to you and where are you at these days?
Since my teenage years, training was always a big part of my life. Running, swimming, bodybuilding, wrestling, and martial arts. Staying fit was always important to me. At the age of 19, I served 6 years with the U.S. Army as a paratrooper with the Airborne Division. The 82nd, we were known as the running junkies and also the jumping junkies. After the military, I spent most weekends sports parachuting for fun. After many decades of hard parachute landings and a few accidents, I had my share of broken bones and injuries to go along with that. Always playing hard, I felt bulletproof in my early years. I relocated to Southern California after the military and spent the next 32 years working as a bodyguard in the executive protection business. I had the privilege of working with the Los Angeles Police Department and LA County Sheriffs. During the 90s, a few retired law enforcement officers and myself decided to take advantage of the new 3 strikes law in California. We were located in California, obviously. We started a fugitive recovery business / bounty hunting business. The 3 strikes law applied to criminals who were convicted of 3 or more violent felonies, earning them a life sentence in a California state prison. We would locate the worst of the worst and arrest these criminals who were evading the law for a percentage of the bond. It was dangerous and we were busy at the time. Most of my career was spent in Beverly Hills, California. I protected celebrities, Saudi royal family members, prime ministers, dignitaries, billionaires, and CEOs. In 2010, I was offered a position protecting a CEO of a large defense contractor and his family. I accepted the position and relocated to the East Coast, now in Northern Virginia. Most of my life, I stayed in great shape because my job and my life depended on it. While living in Southern California, I was a regular at the famous Venice Gold's gym. As time passed, my bulletproof mindset changed. In my late 50s, the joint pain I felt was excruciating. I lived with that pain for years and accepted that was a price to pay for playing hard. Over the course of the next 10 years, I was working long hours and had absolutely no energy or desire to exercise. I gained 75 pounds and went from a 36 to a 44-inch waist. Weighing at 300 pounds at 62 years of age, I realized I was fat, sick, unhealthy, and probably borderline diabetic. I needed to take drastic steps. I attempted numerous diets, even ate vegetarian for over a year with no success. I think I ate more carbs. In fact, I know I ate more carbs as a vegetarian than I did on the standard American diet. I tried the low-fat approach, but found it unsustainable. Next, I tried keto for 2 months and had pretty good success, however, found it complicated. After watching you, ShawnBaker, on YouTube, I started the CarnivoreDiet. Took only a few weeks for all that inflammation and joint pain to be relieved. I'm sure the keto diet had a little bit to do with that because I was keto, like I said, for 2 months prior. I thought it was a miracle. I dropped 65 pounds pretty easily over the course of 10 months, maintaining muscle strength and feeling great. We're hungry. I usually eat 4 eggs and bacon for breakfast and a little coffee with cream, organic cream. I eat a pound of steak or ground beef for lunch and dinner with butter and Redmond salt. And if I want a snack, it's either 4505 pork rinds or some pepperoni slices. What's funny is people are constantly saying, "You look great. What are you doing?" I explain the carnivore diet and usually receive the identical response: red meat is not good for you, and saturated fat causes cardiovascular disease. They proceed to say, "No way, I couldn't even imagine doing that diet. I feel great, Shawn, better than I ever have in decades, and I will never go back to the standard American diet."
Quite an introduction. Yeah. So there's several interesting things in there to me. And I guess I'm just wondering about the personal protection business you were in for so long. And do you often have people trying to harm these other people? These people, are they frequently in danger, or how much is that needed, do you think?
Well, it's more precautionary than anything. We never had any real incidents that you could speak of, but it's more precautionary. These were billionaires, mostly business type people, CEOs. I work for the same defense contractor now. And at the time, we had a pretty viable threat from Al-Qaeda back when that whole war started. They actually took a contract out on some of the executives of the defense industry because of the drones. And we do produce the drones. They took that threat very seriously at the time.
Yeah, I can see that. And I mean, obviously you said you grew, you athlete, fit most of your life. What do you think led to this weight gain? What was the thing that finally, was it you just stopped exercising, or did your diet change, or was it just, it finally caught up with you?
Age caught up with me, Shawn. Hit my late 50s. The pain was just excruciating. And of course the weight came on because I wasn't exercising like I was used to. And that was probably a good 10 to 12 years of not really doing much of anything and eating everything on the standard American diet, not really paying attention. I guess the reality really set in when I got on the scale and I weighed 300 pounds and I was looking at myself in the mirror saying, "I can't believe you let yourself go like this." However, I had to get over that pain, and the carnivore diet did it.
What, and this is something that I'll see a lot of people, they're athletes when they're younger, they can eat a substandard diet, but because they're training all the time, they can hold off the inevitable in many cases. And then as soon as they get an injury or something like that, then once they can't train regularly, it just rapidly goes downhill. You said, you mentioned you tried a sort of a vegetarian style diet for a while and your carb intake went up significantly. There's actually papers out there showing that the more plant-based you go, you tend to eat more processed food. And I don't think that's a fact that is not appreciated by the food industry, because they're trying to get us all to go plant-based, and eventually we're going to eat more processed food. When you were on this vegetarian diet, you said a lot of high carbs, and you still were having problems. Was it just junk food all the time? Were you eating lots of fruits and vegetables, or what were you doing when you were in your vegetarian phase?
Yeah. My wife was vegan at the time also. She is now carnivore. We've been carnivore coming up. June 3rd, in fact, will make a year for us. And we've both done very well on the vegetarian diet. She was vegan. I went vegetarian because she was vegan, and I was miserable the whole time. Did not like it whatsoever. What I ate, mostly junk. You're correct. That's what I found eating, trying to satisfy that gap in my diet, and it did me absolutely no good. We were in the grocery. I remember we were at Whole Foods, and she says, "What do you want to eat this week?" And I said, "It's all rabbit food. What's the difference?" "No, I know what I want." And I went to the meat aisle and grabbed, I think, 4 or 5 steaks and put them in the cart. I said, "I'm done with it." That was before finding you on YouTube and going carnivore. But it's almost like your body knows what it wants. Yeah, you sacrifice for a while and it resorts back to what you need and what you want, I believe.
Yeah, it's a wonder how many poor guys that go vegetarian, vegan because of their partner, their wife, their girlfriend, whatever. And the women don't need as much food as we need typically. And you're sitting there, you're hungry all the time and trying to make up for that. And maybe they're used to being told they need to be as skinny as possible. And guys typically we don't want to be as skinny as possible. We want to have some muscle on our bones. And so those things don't line up, and the poor guys get feminized, or they get weakened in many cases by that. So a year ago, or just about a year ago, where were you in your health journey? Were you already keto at the time or something like? I thought I heard something about that. Where were you before you started, day before you started Carnivore? And then we'll talk about how you've progressed over the year.
Where was I? I was here. I was home. And I started the keto journey, like I said, only about 2 months. And I never really paid attention to YouTube until keto. And then obviously I went from the keto videos and found my way to Carnivore, found my way to you and a few other doctors that you've interviewed in the past. And I found myself hooked. Once I tried it, I was always satisfied, satiated. I'm never hungry. In fact, Shawn, I'm almost 63 years old, and I've been in shape most of my life. My wife competed in figure competitions. She's been shredded during her competitions. I never had a six-pack, and I'm starting to show signs of a six-pack now. It's amazing to me on the carnivore diet. I am completely sold on this for all the health aspects and benefits. Just got my blood work back not too long ago. I think I sent it to your folks. Everything checked out. My LDL was a little high, which we expected. My triglycerides came way down from the year before. I got my CAC done just recently. I just got it back 2 weeks ago. It's 0.
Yeah, it's good for you. And if you actually look up the statistics on men who are, you said you're basically 63, that have a 0 CAC score, it's well below half. It's probably like 25% of guys your age, and those numbers, it might even be less than that, will actually have a 0 CAC score. So that's to be commended for sure. You know, and I think just to reemphasize this point, this is one of the things that's so important when it comes to having stable weight, normal weight. Having control of your appetite is incredibly important. And that's, as I say, a recurrent comment I get with this. People that do carnivore, a lot of them say that, hey, I'm just not hungry anymore, which makes it a lot easier to maintain a diet, is when you're not dealing with hunger all the time. What did you notice how did you start doing this? What were you eating? And what were the things you started to notice early on? Did you have any difficulties with transition, or was it pretty smooth?
Other than the common bathroom issues that I hear from everyone, that was about it for about 2 weeks. And that obviously cleared up. But no, it was pretty smooth. Like I said, being keto for 2 months was probably a little bit of a transition. I don't recall ever experiencing the keto flu at all, which I hear about. That transition was pretty easy. I think I was actually too overwhelmed by just the fact that joint pain was so bad with me that it would be very noticeable when I woke up in the morning after laying dormant all night. I would walk downstairs. Our bedroom was upstairs. I'd walk downstairs and I'd be in such pain, Shawn, that I'd have to grab the handrail on the wall to step down the stairs until I got moving. Once I got moving, after about 5-10 minutes, I was okay. But that's how bad and how intense that pain is. Today, I go up and downstairs all day long. I work out almost every day. We got a pretty nice gym. I'm fortunate, down in our basement. So we work out every day, and that joint pain, I would say it's subsided probably 90%.
Yeah, that's for people that are younger that may be listening. You can't fathom how important that is, and it limits what you can do in life. And you get to this, you work your whole career, you work your life, and then you get to the end of it, and you think you're going to be enjoying life, but no, you're in pain constantly. So so this is very liberating. In fact, now you mentioned your wife has been doing this a year. Has she noticed some benefits as well?
Oh, absolutely. She has breast cancer, and she went through all the surgeries, and she was vegetarian, also vegan for probably 2 years prior to that. And I got her started on the carnivore diet. I guess she was going to try it just to try it, because she knew I was probably going to bug the hell out of her about it. So she said she tried it, and then she liked it, and she sees the benefits from it. She just had all her blood work, and she sees a hormone doctor, and her blood work is amazing. She's come off some of the medications they wanted her on for estrogen, I guess it was. I think it was Remedex, if I'm not mistaken. I told her, I says, there's no sense in taking that, because she was having issues with her hair. falling out. And so she come off the Remedix completely, got her blood work done almost a year later, and everything came back great. She's really doing well. She's seeing significant changes, but she's coming from a competition world. She used to compete in figure competitions many years ago, and she's always stayed in shape. So she never really had any weight to lose, but she's now putting on lean muscle mass. She's feeling good, and she's happy with the diet.
And how old is she, if you don't mind sharing?
She is 55 years old now.
55 and still putting on muscle. That's great. That's great to see. Yeah. You'd mentioned you'd done protection for celebrities and CEOs and billionaires, stuff like that. Did you get to observe what they're eating at any point? Was that something you were close enough where they were hanging out and eating and see what kind of stuff they're eating typically? Or
yeah, it's typically the standard American diet. That doesn't help in that type of work as far as dieting goes, because you're in some of the finest restaurants and taking advantage of that, of course. But yeah, I didn't see any special diet for any of them that I could recall.
Yeah, they're kind of, despite all the wealth, they're still prey to the same temptations and things that everyone else is. And maybe more so because they have access to, you want to try the fanciest dish in the world and have these top chefs prepare it for you. And even though it's still, I had 2 ribeye steaks for breakfast, and I'm eating as good as anybody in the world as far as I'm concerned. I don't care how much money they have. I'm eating probably as good or better than most of them. I don't know if you want to share. You said you were 300 pounds. Where are you at these days? And how tall are you, by the way?
Oh, this morning I weighed in at 233 and I'm 6'2". My goal weight is 225. I'm trying to achieve a 6-pack at 63, Shawn. So it's coming. It's not there yet, but it's coming.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome.
It's close. Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. And it's funny. I remember the first time I had one, I was somewhere in my 40s, and I had tried for many years, and I just never could do it because until you make the necessary dietary adjustments, it's not happening. And how much, so 6'2", 230-ish, how much does that take to fuel you? How much food do you eat in a day?
So I was up until just a couple of weeks ago, because I'm on a caloric deficit now because I'm shooting for that 6-pack. And that's the reason why I need to come down a few more pounds. I was eating up to 2 pounds a day and probably 5 eggs with some bacon and possibly ham. Other than that's about it. Now I'm down to, I eat breakfast in the morning during the week. This morning I had a ribeye and some eggs. And this afternoon I'll probably have a ribeye. And then I won't eat after 1 o'clock until the next morning again. That's just during this period where I'm trying to rip up a little bit.
Yeah, very good. And any downsides to the diet up to this point?
Absolutely none. There's just, all I could think is the upsides. It's like I tell my wife, I say, these are all the noticeable changes that are going on. What about the changes that are going on in our body that we don't even see? We can't expound on those, and I wish we could, but the blood test, the CAC score, some of those tell the truth. And I can't say enough good things about it, Shawn.
Yeah, you mentioned your LDL cholesterol was a little elevated, yet your coronary artery calcium came at 63, mind you, and that's an important aspect. When somebody tells me when they're 30, 35 or 42 and I got a 0 CAC, you kind of expect that. But when you start getting into the 50s and 60s, that's where you start to see this. Do you have a physician that's overseeing some of these labs or commenting on your diet or your weight loss or any of that stuff going on?
Yeah, he's commenting. All right. He's old school. He tried to get me on the DASH diet, and I explained to him my understanding is the DASH diet doesn't work as good as or as well as the Carnivore diet. And he tried to talk me out of the Carnivore diet. In fact, his nurse called me with my blood results and said, yeah, you need to come off your diet. And I told her, I said, that's not going to happen because of my elevated LDL. I asked her about my HDL. That was in check. It is where it's supposed to be. I don't have the paperwork in front of me, or else I'd tell you exactly what that is. My triglycerides came way down, and they are in the normal range. My LDL was slightly elevated. My testosterone was slightly down, but everything else checked out. They did not check my A1C, but my glucose levels were correct where they need to be. I said, that's all that matters. My blood pressure is fine. I wanted my AC1 checked, but they did not check it.
Yeah, a lot of people just get their own labs because a lot of times the physicians, they just have their particular sort of algorithm, which they do. And they're more interested in LDL cholesterol than they are in diabetes in many cases, which there's a lot of literature that would support that diabetes being the bigger issue when it comes to driving heart disease. Now, you mentioned the DASH diet. So it's recently there was basically a brand new paper out looking at DASH diet versus a very low carb ketogenic diet. And the ketogenic diet kicked the DASH's ass in a number of categories, including blood pressure, which is what the DASH diet was designed to do because it's a low salt diet. So interesting. This was a randomized control trial that literally was just published, I think, in the last 2 days. So we have these people that are DASH diet, Mediterranean diet proponents, and we're seeing certainly in day-to-day practice, people that are just getting healthy. There's no doubt about it. And so all they're left with is we think that one day you're going to develop heart disease down the road, maybe, and therefore you should change your diet. But you're like, what about all the benefits I'm getting right now? And for some reason, I don't know why they want to ignore that. Fortunately, you can make your own damn decisions. That's what I tell people. Yeah, your doctor's a consultant. You ain't got to listen to him. You can do what you want. You can do what makes the most sense to you because you're the one that has to live in the body. And I'm sure if you went on a DASH diet, your hunger would probably come back. You'd probably overeat. You'd probably your joints would start hurting again. Your quality of life would go down. You'd probably be depressed. All this. So let me talk about that as far as when you're 300 pounds and everything hurts and your existence is pretty miserable. How did you feel mentally and how does it feel different today?
It is different today. My whole attitude and drive on life was down, Shawn. I didn't feel like doing anything but waking up in the morning to go to work, and I hardly felt like that at the time. So when I was finished with work, all I wanted to do was climb in the recliner and watch TV. That was about the extent of my activity. That's how I felt. Mentally, physically, just completely depleted. And I realized I needed to do something. I needed to do something quick. And like I said, I started watching YouTube videos and I found the keto diet, which led me to the Carnivore diet. And it's made just unbelievable changes in my life all the way around, mentally, physically, my outlook on life. I think I look as good now as I did when I was in my late 20s, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And you mentioned all you want to do is climb into the couch. And a lot of people do that. They get in a recliner and they literally never get out. Their life exists to them. If they're still working, they go home, they lay in the recliner, watch TV, eat junk food, and they never get out of that chair. And then I tell them there's people that's waiting to die. And so now you're here, I'm going to get a six pack and I'm sure you're going to be doing other things activity-wise. And now that, what are you able to do now that you couldn't do before with regard to not having all that joint pain that you had?
I'm not restrained from doing anything. In fact, I felt so good a couple of weeks ago. I went out for a run for the first time in probably 15 years, and it felt pretty good. I don't have any restrictions at this point in time. My joint pain isn't completely gone, but 90% of it is gone, which I find absolutely amazing. There's no drug like meat. That is the drug, and that's the drug that fixes you. It fixes you, and it had me. I'm sold. My joint pain, like I said, is all but subsided, and I have no restrictions.
Now, are you still working in that security field?
I'm in security, and I'm still with the defense contractor, but I'm no longer doing protection work.
The people around you that have witnessed this year-plus transition, hey, what's going on? Has anybody been curious about what's going on with you?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. Like I said, when I tell them what I do, they take a step back, and then I hear about the red meat controversy and the saturated fat controversy. But it's introduced a couple of people to Carnivore. They tell me they're going to go, but I check back with them, and I don't know if they've slipped off the diet or what's going on with them. I try not to push it too much. Whenever I'm asked, I find myself talking about it probably more than I need to. I may inundate them too much with too much information, but I'm pretty excited about it myself. I'm sure that reflects.
Yeah, I can tell you look like you're pretty excited about talking about this stuff. Did you notice, like you said, your wife was putting on muscle? Are you noticing an improvement in your strength and things like that since you started going back since your training?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My body's completely transformed. I'm very happy with my shirt off. Like I said, I couldn't be happier, Shawn. Yeah, I'm putting on, I don't know about getting stronger per se. I'm as strong. Unlike you, I've seen your videos. You lift pretty heavy. I don't lift that heavy. I go moderately heavy where I try to get 12 to 15 reps out of everything that I do. I just started doing dips and I found myself, I was on travel a couple of weeks ago and we were at the gym and I was with a friend of mine that I work with, a work colleague, and he's quite a bit younger, about 3 years younger than me, 23 years younger than me. And we got on the dip bar and I found myself not being able to do one dip, which I found that was after a workout. And I found that very discouraging. So I got a dip bar to go on my rogue rack. And I've been doing dips every day now. And I don't find myself any stronger per se, but I find myself as strong now. Like I said, I don't lift heavy like you.
What were your major joint limitations that limited you from doing things in the past? Like with the knees or back or shoulders, or what was really giving you the trouble?
Yeah, the knees, the back, and then my hip. My left side of my hip started giving me problems. I started feeling that when we'd take the dog for a walk. And I'd tell the wife, my hip is tearing me up for some reason, I'm getting pains in my hip. And it was only the one side, the left side. But both knees, I had a parachute accident many years ago and I broke my right leg up pretty bad. So I'd feel it in my right knee and my ankle extensively. And shoulders a little bit, I could feel the shoulders starting to tighten up and the soreness. And then, of course, the elbows and the wrists. A little bit all over, Shawn, to be honest with you.
Yeah, let me ask you about jumping out of the parachutes. I was considering doing that at one point, but when I did it, you had to do a tandem and I was too heavy for it. I was like 270 and they said you can't do a tandem jump. And so I was like, it was I think
225.
Yeah, there was some reason why I couldn't do that. So I never have. But are you considering going back and doing that again? Or what are your thoughts on there? Too many crashes to do that again?
No, I actually got a guy that works FBI next door to me and he started doing free fall. And he asked me to come back and join him. But I sold all my gear after I moved from California out here to Virginia. I sold my rig. And now, 63, I think I'm done with that, Shawn. But it's a great feeling. And if you get a chance to do it, I always recommend tandem versus what they call AFF, accelerated free fall. Now, you could do accelerated free fall if you wanted to. That's where you go out with two jump masters and you're on your own rig. But yeah, you weigh a little bit. You're too big for the tandem jump. I think it's 225 is the max on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm still sitting about 260 right now. So it's just a little too heavy and it's not high on my list of things I want to do right at the moment, but sounds fun. What, I guess, is there something you can share with us about the protection stuff that most people don't know that might be of interest to people? Because you've got we talk about diet a whole bunch here, but sometimes people have such unique backgrounds. It's fun to dig into that area.
Yeah, what can I share about that? It was interesting work coming from the military. I got out, I left Fort Bragg and went to California and dabbled with doing some construction work for a short time, and then met a guy that was actually former SAS, Special Air Services with the British. And he was a neighbor. And he asked me with my background, what do I do for a living? And I told him at the time I was doing construction. And he said, you should get involved in the executive protection business. And he's the one that actually got me involved. And my first protection detail was a billionaire in the Los Angeles, Beverly Hills area. And I worked him for about 12 years. And then it just peeled off from there. But yeah, it's an interesting business. It kept me employed for the better part of 32 years, and it's still keeping me employed now. Like I said, I'm no longer in the protection business, but this was a result of it. I'll finish out my last 4 or 5 years and then retire with this defense contractor that I work with now.
When you're doing the protection for high worth or high visibility individuals, is it like 24/7 or is it just certain things? And do they ever do stupid stuff? You're like, don't do that because it's too much of a security risk?
Oh, it's a babysitting job. I guess it depends on who you work. The CEOs and the businessmen they usually stay in check. It's the celebrities that are usually the issue. When you're working celebrities, you're basically babysitting. It's keeping track of them and keeping them out of trouble seems to be a full-time job. But yes, for the business people, depending on the threat level, I ran a pretty sizable team in LA for the CEO, one CEO of defense contractor with whom I work right now 24/7. And we had about 42 LAPD, LA County sheriffs working for us. Most of those guys were active at the time. So it was a pretty viable threat. So yes, 24/7, close proximity, and all the family members, the children, along with the spouse. And it's a big job. It's a big detail. But I worked a few celebrities. I didn't work a whole lot. I've got friends that are in the business that work celebrities all the time. Those are mostly temporary jobs. The production company usually pays for them because you're protecting their asset if they're filming a certain movie. I stayed away from those as much as possible. I've worked quite a few, but they weren't long-term. They were always short-term details.
What about out of the country? Did you ever have to go out of the country or anything like that? Is there certain places that are like really problematic for this type of stuff?
Yeah. Yes. I traveled overseas quite extensively. After the residential team ended, I worked the travel team for the defense contractor that I work for now and protected their CEO and other executives within the business. So I was overseas quite a bit: Singapore, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Australia. I've been London, all over numerous times. In Saudi Arabia, tensions are high. So you got to keep your head on a swivel. Usually some of the other locations are pretty low key, and we try to stay low key as much as possible.
And what about, obviously you're carrying weapons, I would assume. Is it hard? Do you have to deal with the locals? Why some countries may not appreciate people walking around, foreigners walking around with weapons?
Yeah, that doesn't happen. We carry here in the States when we were doing protection, but overseas that's not the case.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So it's harder to protect people in that situation.
Yeah, just take the precautions. We usually have somebody local from the area that is usually armed working with us.
Yeah, I see. And then do you have to have any special skills, combat skills, or was there things you had to do? Did you ever have to wrestle anybody or anything like that? Or was it pretty?
Yeah. Yeah, we've had to move bodies before where people are in the way, or a homeless person comes up and solicits money or whatever the case may be, but nothing really extensive. It's pretty uneventful for the most part, and that's good. That's exactly what we want. As far as training goes, absolutely. This company that I work for now has probably spent easily a couple of $100,000 in training over the course of 13 years on me. Everything from shooting courses, various different locations. We used to go out to a gun site out in Arizona and train quite often, the 6 Hour Academy up in New Hampshire. We've been to numerous driving schools, tactical driving schools, combat medicine schools. The list goes on.
Yeah, so you're fairly well qualified for that stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's. I think we see stuff on TV, and then the real life. Like even as a surgeon, most of surgery is boring, which is what we want. We want it to be boring. We don't want it to be exciting, because exciting times gets people hurt and can get you killed or something like that. Let's go back to, so as far as the diet is concerned, you said you're about 2 pounds plus some eggs, stuff like that. Do you, and it is interesting because you mentioned I'm trying to cut down and I'm in a caloric deficit, and a lot of people in the low carb community are of the opinion that calories are irrelevant. And I tell them, no, that's not the case. There's a lot of hormonal and metabolic advantages to being on a carnivore diet, but it does not mean that, like for me, if I want to gain weight, I eat more meat. If I want to lose weight, I eat less. It just works that way for the vast majority of people. What are you focusing? Obviously, you're in this little deficit right now trying to get that six pack. Day to day, are you focusing on fat, protein, or is there sort of a thing you pay attention to?
I'm not at this point, Shawn. That's why I find this diet so easy. When I was keto, it was too complicated. It was too arduous, having to measure everything and weigh everything. It just, even though I saw success on the keto diet, it was just too complicated of a program. With carnivore, I just eat till I'm full. And I'm getting all the results I want without having to keep track of my macros.
What do you think? One of the other criticisms I often hear about a carnivore diet is it's unaffordable. It's too expensive. No one can do it. How does that compare to keto? Because I think keto is actually more expensive, or can be, depending on how you do it. And then how does that compare to keto and maybe the other diets you've been on, vegetarian, standard American?
And not only have I found with the ease of the carnivore diet, getting in and out of the supermarket quickly is very relevant. We're only in there 15, 20 minutes. We know exactly what we want. and we're in and out. I think it's considerably less if you eliminate all the carbohydrates and junk food we used to buy. My wife pays the bills. I don't stay up on all that, but I haven't heard any controversy. We actually go through White Oak Pastures, I believe it is, to purchase most of our meat. And sometimes we run to Whole Foods every now and then and pick up some if we run a little bit low. But I do eat a lot of ground beef. It's grass-fed, grass from White Oak Pastures. And every now and then I'll buy a rib roast and cut it up myself. And we just recently did that. That is grain fed, but the wife, she'd rather eat grass fed, grass finished. She would rather stay away from the grain fed, but I'm okay with it every now and then.
Yeah, Will Harris will be happy. I've interviewed Will before from White Oak, and he's doing a great job out there with the whole regenerative ag. He's down there in Bluffton, Georgia. And so good for you on supporting. Like I tell anybody, supporting your ranchers is a great thing. I think that's super important. They do a very important job. They're often underappreciated, overworked, and certainly underpaid for what they provide, which is perfect nourishment for human beings. Let's keep getting that message out there. Hopefully more people hear it. As far as, were you ever on medications over the years, like anti-inflammatories or I don't know, did you ever take any medications, blood pressure issues or anything like that?
No, I think I nipped it in the butt, so to speak, before that happened, Shawn. I think I was getting at that point, obviously, the high triglycerides. They were pretty elevated. I was heading down the wrong path, and I was just around the corner from probably that situation, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you mentioned your doctor. He said stop the carnivore diet. Did he watch you lose 80 pounds or whatever it was, 70 pounds or whatever? Has he watched that and commented on that?
Yeah, I mentioned that to him. I said, Doc, I shedded 65 pounds it was, Shawn. I shedded 65 pounds, and where was all this ice when I was 300? And my triglycerides were elevated. I think when my cat came back, he didn't have much to say after that.
Yeah, and fair enough. Even the American Heart Association concedes that a zero CAC score is a relative de-risking metric. So that if you got somebody that's questionable, you got mildly elevated LDL cholesterol, at least from my perspective, I've seen some very high LDLs, and then great numbers all across the board, and you've got a zero CAC score. So as far as I'm concerned, your risk profile is probably relatively low, and just your age alone puts you at higher risk. But you repeat it in 5 years or something like that, make sure it's staying low, and there's not much else I can say to you at that point, I think. But how do you like to cook? You said your wife does the shopping. Who does the cooking? Are you out there cooking steaks on the grill, or how's that going in the house?
Yeah, most of the time I'm the one that does the cooking. She does a little bit. We're on the grill, or I've been using the smoker probably for the last month or so, just about every day. I prefer that. So I put the meat on the smoker, and I usually crank it up to full because of time. But yeah, it turns out real nice. We do the burgers on there, and I do a pound at a time, and I eat that. I take that into work with me. And then steaks are a luxury. We don't do steaks all the time, but usually it's ground meat, but it's grass-fed, grass-finished.
Yeah, ground beef is so versatile. It tastes delicious, and nothing wrong with that. You can do this diet on 100% ground beef for sure, and it can be quite affordable. Bringing it into work, are you eating at work? A lot of people sometimes just eat breakfast and don't eat at work, but are you bringing it in for lunch, and you get people around the break room or wherever you're eating saying, "Hey, look at you eating your hamburger again," or something like that?
Oh yeah, no, I get it all the time. They respect it. They see the results. They saw the 65 pounds come off. They see the results. They see me coming to work every day, and they're kind of left. There's no controversy. The results are the results. But I get it every now and then. Usually he's dedicated. So yeah, I do. I take it in, and I throw it in the microwave and go ahead and eat my pound of burger, and that's, or steak, whatever I decide to carry in.
Yeah, it literally is. It's hard to argue with results. It's just, hey, you can say whatever you want, but here's the results. And that's something. I was in England a couple of days ago, and I was supposed to be part of this debate between plant-based and meat-based. And I just asked the audience, basically, how many of you guys are eating meat-based and doing better? Damn near 80% of the audience put their hand up. I'm saying, you can't argue with that. It worked out pretty well. But let's go. You go back to 5 years ago, whenever you're at your fattest weight. And what were you thinking? Was it just, this is life? I'm old, I'm resigned to this? Or how did you justify that? Because you don't gain 80 pounds or 70 pounds of fat over a day. It happens over a period of time. Was there something that was like, well, this is just me getting old?
Yeah, I guess a lot of it probably stemmed from long work hours initially. And in my later 50s, the pain pretty much was the deciding factor for most of that complacency. It was just the pain was excruciating. So working out wasn't even a thought at the time. But yeah, that happened over the course of about 12 years. I was always in shape when we were out in California. We moved out here in 2011 to Northern Virginia. And at that point, I kind of let myself go all the way up until 2022, June of 2022. That changed. I did have COVID also in 2020. I think I had it in October of 2020. It put me down for a month. I was hospitalized until they hooked me up and started feeding me intravenously. That's when I started recovering from it. But I was down for a month and I had that initial strain of COVID, which it really took it. I've never been so sick in my life. So I think being metabolically unhealthy was a big contributor to that. And it was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where, and when this sort of pandemic first evolved, everybody already should have known the people that are metabolically unhealthy, obese, are the ones that are going to be at the most risk, and why we did not emphasize that and plead with these people to fix their diet and become more active. Anyway, that's water under the bridge at this point. It's just a drug company. They just want to make a bunch of money, and I'm fully convinced of that. And so anyway, so you said your wife has always been relatively in shape. She's putting on muscle now in her 50s. Does she have any pushback in her circle among her friends or relatives or family members or coworkers or things like that?
Immediate family members, yeah, they ignore us, I think. I think they're old school. They believe in the old ways. And I've sent them numerous videos that you've had on YouTube and various other doctors. And they're just dismissed. In fact, my mother came back to me during a phone conversation and said, "You need to stop all this craziness. You're going to end up having a stroke." That was before I got the CAC, and I called her to happily inform her my CAC was 0. That likelihood of me having a stroke is not a factor here. Like I said, they can't argue with the results, but I think I heard you mention one time people hate to be wrong, so they don't want to admit it. I keep getting from family members that they heard enough about it. They're not interested, so I leave it alone now.
Yeah, interesting. You'll probably see them continue to get worse and worse physically and mentally and all those types of things. What outside of joint pain was getting better? Did you notice any other improvements like mood, mental clarity, skin, nails, hair, digestion, sleep? Any other benefits that you've noticed?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything, all the above, which you just mentioned. And if I could bring my wife up again, going through chemotherapy for breast cancer, her nails were all undermined and falling off. And all that has cleared up completely for her. Her hair is back in strong. It's not as long as it was, but it's back. It's healthy. So I've seen the most improvement skin-wise and nail-wise, hair-wise concerning the carnivore diet where she's concerned, Shawn, more so than myself. I had a little bit of psoriasis on my hands, I believe, and that's all cleared up and gone away.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like a panacea in many ways. It does seem to fix so many things that, and it just shows you how poor our diet has gotten. And it affects all of us. And here's a pill or an over-the-counter product you can take for this issue or that issue. And it's just, you don't need any of that stuff. I think if everybody went carnivore, 60% of businesses would go out of business.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't need the stuff anymore. So there's definite, like I said, there's undeniably the business model for the pharmaceutical companies is we need lots of sick people to be medicated. And when those people aren't there, they don't make money. And so they control much of the media. And so that's why we continue to see this push back against so hard. And I think it'll be pushed back even harder and harder. And I worry about people some people think I'm conspiracy, but we're seeing it in New York City. We see it in Edinburgh, Scotland, where they basically ban meat in the schools. In New York, they're more or less trying to go that way. Other places, there's countless examples of that. Do you have any thoughts or concerns about what if we live 10 years from now and they said a pack of ground beef is going to cost you $25 a pound or something like that? Do you have concerns about that being a reality?
Could it happen? Absolutely, it could happen, but I don't concern myself with it. Hopefully it doesn't, Shawn. It doesn't happen in our lifetime.
on anyone's lifetime. I think about my kids as well. It's one of those things where you think it could never happen, and things do happen. And so I think we just have to make sure that we do what we need to do to make sure that it can't happen. But a lot of people, when they go carnivore and they realize that maybe the people telling us nutrition didn't know what the hell they're talking about because I'm much better. Does it cast doubt on you and some other things in society or things you've been told or anything like that? Does it change your perspective?
No, not mine. Like I said, at this point, it's results driven. I don't see any downfall from it whatsoever, Shawn. I've experienced it now for almost a year, and the results have been amazing. I feel great. These are just the things that I could detect on the surface, let alone what's going on beneath. Blood test came back great. We expected the high LDL, the elevated, not high, I shouldn't say high, it was slightly elevated LDL. CAC score came back. There's just no turning back. I have no doubts that this is the way we should eat.
Yeah, and your LDL, which I think you sent it to me or something like that. I remember looking at it. It's not even that high. It was just kind of like mildly elevated. I want to say something like 140 or something like that. That would have been normal 20 years ago. Anyway, so they've just recently brought it down lower and lower. They want everybody's LDL to effectively be zero as the ultimate protection from heart disease, although that comes with its own set of problems, which they're reluctant to. They'll say there's no problem with having an LDL of less than 20 or less than 10 even. And I think that's just absolute insanity, quite honestly. So you said you weren't really doing much YouTube. Do you do any social media at all? Are you like any kind of social media pages, or you not doing that stuff?
No, not at all.
Good for you. I think it saves you a lot of sanity. I'm unfortunately compelled to do that as part of the nature of what they're doing business because we got to spread the message. But it can be a time suck and it can frustrate you. And sometimes I don't want to read this stuff because it's so stupid. But anything else we missed out on? Anything else you want to share?
I think we covered it all, Shawn, to be honest with you, sir.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. Well, keep up the good work, Dave, and tell your wife congratulations as well. And thanks for sharing your story. I'm sure it'll help to inspire because a lot of people were in your boat in their late 50s, early 60s, too damn fat, feeling like garbage. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think that's the lesson we can learn here. And unfortunately, a lot of times our physicians are not particularly helpful. Here's a pill for this and a pill for that. And they put you on some diet. This is funny because they tell you meat is unhealthy, right? So you don't eat that. Then you eat all this processed garbage, and they make this addictive processed garbage. And they say, eat some salad and moderate the processed stuff. Is really which is almost impossible to do for most people. And salad's unsatisfying. The processed stuff is too hard to resist, and you don't get your satiety until you start including the meat back again. And they make a lot of money off you. Anyway, I'll tell you what, Dave, thank you so much for your time here. Appreciate it. For the rest of the guys, we'll be back tomorrow. All right. Take care, guys. Thanks, Dave. Hey, folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to CarnivoreDiet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.